I'm Kiva Harper.
And I'm Deanne Roper.
And we are two clinicians talking.
So, Kiva, I am really interested in hearing about your process and your ideas about decolonizing therapy. And, I want to be able to continue to do my own work. And I know you've done a lot of work in that area too. So I really am curious to hear about that from you specifically.
Yeah, that is my thing. And I think that's going to be happening for years to come. It started, you were instrumental in that. You were talking about decolonization. I was like, what is that? I've never heard that before. And then you told me how you found out what it was. And so that's where my journey started. And we started on this path to look at our syllabi, look at our courses. And I started thinking about, okay, well, what about outside of school and outside of academia? What does decolonization look like? So I started thinking about my practice and the clients that I see. And there's certain things that have never felt right in like thinking about the DSM and labeling people, especially doing it too soon. That's never felt right. And then sometimes I think people, I see people who have experienced trauma or traumatic grief, and sometimes it's just post-traumatic stress and not necessarily a disorder. Right. And they're coping with it. And so what I've done in my practice, I'm not in network with any insurance company, so that helps. There's no pressure to hurry up and get a diagnosis or anything like that. And so with my clients, I used to start out with a diagnostic evaluation. That was my first session. And now I don't do that unless they're asking for a diagnosis. So now I just start out with a 1-hour session, get to know them, build a rapport, find out what the presenting problem is, and I don't necessarily have to attach that to a DSM diagnosis. So that's one thing that I've changed. It's also more economical because they're not paying for the that diagnostic exam. What are some other things that I've done? I think really doing a lot of psychoeducation, that's the other thing, and really, really taking into account culture. Mm-hmm. I mostly see people of color. And so when I think of racial trauma and just all of the things that are going on in the world today, these people are having a normal reaction to abnormal events. And it doesn't feel right to label them with something. And so we treat the symptoms. So that's where I am right now. And I'm still continuing to work. I look at my handouts, my intake paperwork and things like that. And I'm constantly changing that to be more inclusive. It's an ongoing process. I don't think I'll ever get to the point where, okay, my practice is decolonized. I don't think that's going to happen. Right. I think it's always evolving.
So do you think, this question just occurred to me, do you think that the fact that we have to be licensed, and I'm thinking about decolonizing all the way through, deeply, mm-hmm. Do you think that there's a gatekeeping through the licensure process in advanced clinicians? Mm-hmm. Tell me, what are your thoughts about that?
It's funny you should say that, because there's a part of me that is, thinking I might move more towards coaching.
Yeah, that's a big area right now. Yeah. But the licensure really does protect people too, right? So it's sort of pros and cons there.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. I think when I think of my practice in the future, it will be a combination of both. Because there are absolutely times where someone may come to me and have a diagnosis of PTSD, and I clearly see that, and I'm going to use evidence-based treatment to treat them. Right. So that happens as well. But sometimes it is simply a trauma reaction. Yeah. And once you do evidence-based therapy, something like EMDR, then they don't meet the criteria anymore, but that label is still there in their records.
Right. I've always sort of practiced from a feminist perspective of people's stories or healing, and my process is to really be present to them and their healing, and in that process, in and of itself, that trusting relationship. And I kind of think of that as decolonizing kind of theory as well, in the sense that I get a lot of young women who come to see me, and they're sort of in life transition areas. And, we talk a lot about gender roles and the impact of that. And they begin to see, at first they're not really aware of that. And they start to see the system and social roles and, how that really affects them, and then affects their mental health and makes them sort of question themselves. And that in and of itself, when they can't trust their gut, sometimes is what brings them to therapy, that brings them in for services, because that really seeps into so many things. And to me, that's sort of a seed of decolonizing. Don't trust yourself. Yeah. You have to trust the authority.
Yes. They know what's best for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I'm glad you said that. I've always incorporated a feminist perspective as well, feminist theory, because I like the wellness-based part of it.
Right.
There's just something about pathologizing things that doesn't always sit right with me.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I had a client who came in for the first time the other day, and I kind of always ask about physical things, of course, right? And ask when the last time she had her physical and that. And she said, you know what? I'm so glad you brought that up. I had blood work done like a year ago, and I was supposed to go follow up on it. There were some things that showed up, and I need to do that. Thank you for being holistic, and thank you for bringing that up, and not sort of everything is about my emotional health, because you are really hitting on something. So
that's amazing.
Seeing that whole person, I think, is also a way of decolonizing our perspectives, don't you think?
I definitely think so. And then, the other thing that comes up is some of the evidence-based treatment protocols that I've learned don't fit with everyone.
Exactly.
I was just reading something the other day about cognitive behavioral therapy, which I really love. I have everything, probably everything that I can find by Aaron Beck and his daughter.
Right, Judith, right?
As well.
Yeah.
Yes. And I like a lot of what they do. It's easy to implement. I think it's a great go-to for therapists. However, telling someone that their thoughts are irrational, sometimes that may not fit. And so I had to look at that again and okay, maybe this is not the most appropriate intervention to use,
It could be very rational for them.
Yeah.
But
it may be tell them that it's not.
Right. But it might be rational for them at that time, but maybe it's not working for them now as a rational thought. And I try to get them to tell me, is that rational?
What happens if it's a person that comes in and they've been dealing with, they say they've been profiled by police and they deal with racism at work? So how do you go back to what is the irrational thought there?
Right. I actually, I have had that come up, and I validate it, and I'm like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that affects you. And so what can you control internally? In terms of, that process and protect yourself and heal. That's hard.
And then how do you heal when something is ongoing?
Exactly. That self-care piece.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I've been learning about this new model, this liberation. And it's, I want to say it right. The training that I went to, she says that,
liberation.
Yeah, it's a liberation framework, but there's something that she says about healing. I think I'm not good.
It'll come back.
Hopefully,
it'll come back to you.
Hopefully,
yeah. When I used to work in criminal justice, and we had a lot of clients who were, dealing with social justice issues. That's one of the main things I would say to them. Yes, it is true. It is very true. And, the odds are stacked, and how can we help you be, healthy and make good decisions based on the situation that you're currently in.
Yes.
And that's where your power comes in.
Right. So, and that's empowering them.
Yeah. For sure.
To not feel helpless.
Yeah.
I love that.
Decolonizing is a process. That is for sure.
It is a process, but it's necessary.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.